start our lives in an orderly fashion. But what happened in the morning is that absolutely, I think, nobody even went close to the schools. And I would say maybe 98% of the shops are closed in Tripoli.
Well, SMS text messages are one thing, the infiltration of anti-government websites another. Al-Jazeera has learned that some opposition sites are now the target of attacks. Analyst Tariq Youssef explains.
There's a Libyan website called libyawatanuna.com, which lists a host of Libyan opposition web pages. If you click on many of these web pages, you'll find that they're either down, not responding, or they've moved to Facebook. And we have now reports that even some of the Twitter accounts that are being managed by the youth inside of Libya and outside are beginning to look like they might be compromised or they might be unreliable.
Well, Al Jazeera's web and new media teams are continually trying to verify the online content that we're running. And if the sites are being hacked by pro-government infiltrators, that job is made all the harder. But let's take a look at some of the recent tweets. That's messages put on the online micro-blogging website Twitter. And this is the form they appeared. Live phone call from Tripoli within the last 2 hours. Government doing a bad job trying to hide what happened. Bullet marks still visible. That's a reference to reports that people are recruited by the government have been cleaning up after graffiti and blood. Another phone call, people disregarded yesterday's SMS messages by the government to return to work and school. And one more, somewhat more ominous from Tripoli, special guards gathering at main squares and Revolutionary Committee headquarters. Well, plenty more content coming online. We'll be back with more from the web desk a little later.
Thanks so much. Well, Libya's government has spent years strengthening relations with Latin America, mostly through investments. Al Jazeera's Gabriel Elizondo reports from Sao Paulo now on the region's divided reaction to Gaddafi's crackdown.
Libya and Latin America. A close look shows that for years, Muammar Gaddafi has been quietly cultivating economic and diplomatic relations in Latin America that might now be working to his advantage. Consider Cuba and Nicaragua. Reuters news agency obtained documents that claim to show that Libya gave both countries interest-free loans, Nicaragua as much as $300 million. Now, Nicaraguan leader Daniel Ortega is the only Latin America leader who has spoken out in defense of Gaddafi, saying he is, quote, waging a great battle to defend his nation. And Cuba's Fidel Castro cautioned this week against a rush to judgment against the Libyan leader. Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez has been a frequent visitor to Gaddafi in Libya. Relations have strengthened, and there have reportedly been more than 150 diplomatic and economic accords signed between the two nations in the past few years. The two leaders are so close, there was a rumor started by Western diplomats that Gaddafi had fled to Venezuela earlier this week. The rumor turned out to be false and attracted sharp criticism by Venezuela's foreign minister.
And here in Brazil, the relationship with Libya remains complicated. In recent years, Brazil has become a major trading partner with the Middle East and North Africa. $5.8 billion last year alone. And just in Libya, some of Brazil's biggest construction companies have contracts there worth billions more. Now, Brazil has growing international diplomatic influence, but it appears right now they don't want to use it. Brazil's new president, Dilma Rousseff, has said absolutely nothing.
But as violence continues in Libya, the presidents of Mexico, El Salvador, and Colombia have all spoken out.
I would like to express my deep sorrow, my indignation, and my sadness for the way the civilian in the case of Libya.
Peru is the only country in Latin America to break all diplomatic ties with Libya, making it the rare exception in a region that otherwise is now playing a delicate diplomatic dance with a Libyan leader they all once seemed so close to. Gabriel Elizondo, Al Jazeera, Sao Paulo.
The Philippines is marking 25 years since its own people power revolution forced Ferdinand Marcos from power. It's being seen as both a hopeful and cautionary example for democracy.
For many Filipinos, it was their country's proudest moment. the 20-year Marcos dictatorship overthrown, the peaceful uprising was known as people power. The world watched as a widowed housewife named Cory Aquino assumed the presidency. As the Marcos family went into exile, there were high hopes that the Philippines would finally regain a place among the frontrunners in Asia.
25 years on, and people power has taken on a bittersweet flavor for many Filipinos who feel not much has changed since they first reclaimed democracy.
8 months ago, Cory Aquino's only son was sworn in as the Philippines' 15th president, with one of the largest mandates in the nation's history. His mother had just passed away, and he inherited the mantle of ushering in change. Filipinos had once again grown tired of a continuing stream of corrupt officials.
The change of management was there, but the political culture lived on. So you have to get rid of that political culture if you're going to have really a meaningful democracy.
The Marcoses are all back from exile too. His widow is in Congress and his only son in the Senate, seemingly poised to be in the running for the next presidential elections.
I think there are fewer and fewer big misconceptions about the Marcos legacy. I think that the propaganda that was so rife in 1986 has been proven to be propaganda and nothing else.
For many Filipinos, people power is now little more than an empty symbol.
That's what these people in Tunisia and Egypt have to watch out for. The same thing that happened to us. If they don't write it into their textbooks and educate the next generation of children that what happened was a bleak and black period in their history, then they're going to see Mubarak's descendants and Ben Ali's descendants come back in 10 or 20 years.
It was the first of its kind and served as an example. And 25 years on, as Filipinos remember, they also hope that the world heeds the lessons of its failures. Marga Ortigas, Al Jazeera, Manila.
Well, the polls have opened in Ireland for the first general election since a major financial bailout by the EU and IMF. Rory Challens is live for us in Dublin. Rory, does it look like the ruling party is simply unofficially admitted defeat before it's even started? I think they're fielding only 75 candidates in this race.
Well, the voters are definitely angry, Sammy. Yeah, the polling station behind me opened just about 25 minutes ago. We've seen a few trickles of voters coming in, but it is expected to be a high turnout in this election. But let's not forget that this is an election that Ireland shouldn't actually really be having yet. It was called early because of all that outrage over the banking crisis and the $115 billion bailout that Ireland was forced to accept. And the voters hold one party responsible for that. That's Fianna Fáil, which has dominated Irish politics for decades and decades. And so they are heading for their worst ever election result, if you believe what the polls are saying. So, of course, that's good news for Fianna Fáil's rivals, Fine Gael. At the end of the counting, they may not have quite enough votes to form an outright majority. They may have to do a bit of coalition building, probably with Labour. But whoever wins this election, it's going to be a very, very tough few years ahead, because the constraints that the bailout has put on Irish politics are so tight that they don't really have much room for manoeuvre, Sammy.
Let's talk a little bit more about that point, Rory. I mean, no matter what any party says now while campaigning, to make a radical change to the country's austerity and debt commitments is going to be a difficult process, isn't it? Because it does involve international institutions and agreements.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, many people are saying that given Ireland's situation, this is the most important election in